In the latest episode of Ready to Love, it's time for people to meet the exes, and more often than not, having this person come onto the show blows up in somebody's face. Usually the guy who used to date the woman. To start off, Maria's ex, who happens to be named Jessica, meets Janelle in this series / season's Jessica, and it couldn't have gone worse. When it comes to Janelle and Jessica, they are religious, conservative when it comes to spiritualism. So when Maria's ex Jessica brings out tarot cards, it's an immediate no. They're making sure that Maria knows that they walk with the Lord. And it seems he's on a first class ticket out of here probably in the next episode. But let it be known, he ain't alone in having a little bit of a screw up. Chris's ex meets Jessica as well, and with it being very clear that when it comes to Chris, he needs to be type A, he needs to be supported, pretty much you're going to be in a role of servitude. Jessica's like, this is not the type of program I'm down for, and it makes her question, can she really have something long term with this man? And then switching over to Quentin, he has a double date with, not a double date, he has his ex meet both Janelle and Lee, and Lee just shuts down. As now, granted, it's because Quentin said that he ghosted her, and with that, she's kind of taken aback to the point where she never recovers. But like some other people in this episode, it seems all it took was one comment, and with that, it's almost time to kick rocks. And thus far, we haven't had someone self-eliminate, but more and more it seems like one of the ladies may take that into consideration. For example, Kira, it seemed like she was ready to do that because she went on a date to see Phil's ex, and as soon as she mentioned she prefers men who don't have kids, that was it. And with Herbert having no interest in her, well, at least no interest in her enough to have her meet his ex. I believe only Janelle meets his ex, and it's kind of like, okay, but nothing that can make you think that he's going to catch up to what Quentin is. At this point, it seems that if we do get 3 final couples, it's not going to be from anybody that was mentioned in this topic. Which leads to the actual good portion of people who did actually get something out of meeting the ex. Janelle, when it comes to Quentin, I mean, granted, Janelle ain't getting nothing out of me, Quentin's ex, but with Quentin saying what he did to Lee, it pretty much knocked Lee out of running. So now it seems that Quentin is just all Janelle all the time, or at least he can be. Then when it comes to Aries, she too might be in a situation where there might be multiple people after her, as Chris and her, when Aries meets Chris's ex, she doesn't really say anything. He does apologize to wasting his ex's time, and that vulnerability is attractive to Aries, but as Chris's ex-girlfriend talks about the subservient thing, everything's going to be about him, everything's going to be about you, she doesn't really do anything. Pretty much all the editing focuses on what Jessica's reaction is, so we can assume things aren't bad when it comes to that for her, but it's hard to say. Then when it comes to Phil, even though Phil has Katarina, Kira, and also Aries meet his ex, it seems only Aries is somebody who he really melds with. And it's even to the point where his ex mentions that he's not somebody that's much for physical affection and stuff like that. Yet Aries is like, I don't know who you talking about, but this man has his hand on my thigh. So maybe he didn't want to do physical affection with you, but for me, there's no problems here. So with that in mind, it seems Aries and Phil may be a lock-in. With all that said, somebody has to leave, and unfortunately, we don't get a double elimination this episode. But we do get 2 people on the bottom. One is Kira, who was already expected, and joining her is another person who was expected in Sierra. Now, Sierra did go on a date with Maria, but it's one of those type of dates where he was going with her just because, he messed things up so bad with Janelle and Jessica that it was about time for him to maybe consider settling, or at least in his mind, he was thinking of settling, even though Sierra already has that red label of being a homie vibe, which, considering Moyer also has that, you would think that could potentially help the two, but unfortunately it doesn't for her. But what does help Sierra is that Kira has already burnt her bridges with Quentin, burnt her bridges with Phil, Moyer, and that's more than enough men to make her the one that gets kicked out. Now, it should be noted, Lee was part of the conversation as well, but again, because some of the ladies haven't said or done anything offensive enough to really be on someone's radar to make sure to get kicked off, they stick around. But as we will say in the predictions, between Sierra and Lee, they should definitely be kept in consideration for who goes next. So, predictions. Next to eliminate for the men is definitely Moyer. As noted in the past episode, if you want straight, live in a binary Christian, and live a very narrow life outside of enjoying traveling, you're pretty much in danger from the start. Anything that's not considered normative when it comes to this show puts you pretty much automatically on the chopping block. Too many kids, you like to embrace your femininity as a guy or whatever, that's not going to work here. So, for Moyer, when his ex being into something that Janelle considers the occult, that was an instant kiss of death. But whenever it comes to this show, it's not just one person in the bottom, it's two. And I think at this point, it's going to be Herbert. The lack of effort comment is just repeated over and over again. And with Janelle really strongly connected with Quentin at this point, and Herbert not really connecting with anybody else, unless he has a last minute thing going on with Sierra, I can't imagine anybody really like pushing for him to stay. With that said, Sierra's probably the next one to go. Since I just don't see her bouncing back from the homie comment, since I can only think of one cast member, and that was like way back in the early season, who has ever bounced back from being called a homie. And pretty much when it comes to that cast member, one of the first ones who was a female comedian, I think she's Carlos Miller's baby mama, she got that homie label early on, and only because she connected with one guy who was willing to fight for her, that's the only reason she got to stay for the whole season, or for a good part of it. Otherwise, once you're a homie, whether you're a man or woman, pretty much that's your ticket out. So, Sierra, definitely, she's in a danger zone. But at the same time, with, I believe, either Phil or Quentin saying that Lee was often too busy to do dates and stuff like that, she also is going to be in the bottom, and I think at this point, she's probably just here because no one told her to leave. That's pretty much it. But even taking all of that into consideration, I want to push Jessica for also being in danger, since with her not liking Maria's lifestyle, with Chris appearing too type A and expecting her to be, demure and a stereotypical woman, I don't think she's going to have any connections here. And granted, Herbert is still out there. She could potentially match up with him, but with him being told by multiple women that he doesn't put enough effort, and Jessica already, when it came to Chris not really doing that, I don't really think that this is going to change anything for her. And heck, let's throw Katarina in there, because who has she considered a match right now? Nobody's talking about her when it comes to their top. I don't even know if she has a top 3, 1, or whoever. So whether it's going to be a double elimination or the first self-elimination of the season, one of those ladies I feel are going to go. Either Jessica's going to self-eliminate, Lee may do so, or even Katarina. But in terms of elimination, my bet's on Sierra. Now, as for final couples, I feel like Quentin and Janelle can make it to the end, and I think I may hold on to that for the rest of the season unless something happens. And I think joining them is going to be Phil and Aries. Since even though Aries didn't really feel a certain type of way about the comments that Chris's ex was making, I can't imagine the idea of her putting him before all else, which could potentially include her boys. And also, with that said, I still don't think any of them will make it past the reunion show, and I also can't imagine a third couple coming out of this unless somebody like Moria was willing to do with Sierra decides to settle. Switching to the review portion, pretty much the same thing we've said about any of the episodes dealing with meeting the exes. It's an odd staple for this show. And I would use Phil as perhaps a prime example since the relationship you had with somebody, the dynamic you had with them, where they were in life at that time was a completely different time. Phil, for whatever reason, didn't want to be touchy-feely with this woman. Add in that he was in a place where his job was a little funny because he was basically doing insurance, and if there wasn't any type of natural disaster, he wasn't making money. There's factors in there that have to be accounted for that makes it so his ex, maybe she can talk about who he was back then, but how does that play into these new sets of women, these new women that are in his face? Never mind, culture-wise, his ex, I don't know what she was, whether she was white or maybe a pale Latina, but compared to him being with a black woman, there could be cultural things there that make it so that he is more willing or able to open up. And who knows? With Maria presenting the idea of settling, who knows if there was a time when Phil just needed some type of boost in his life. She liked him, potentially loved him, it was there, and I don't want to say he used her, but definitely enabled her to feel as much as she could without him having to give much back. And to continue, I really want to also bring up another situation where it shows that exes do not really help, and that is in terms of Maria. Maria already said that he walks with the Lord. It's just he's exploring his spirituality in different ways. He's not a Christian, but he believes in God. And I think the way that his ex brought things up almost feels like sabotage in a way, but at the same time, when it comes to these exes, yes, oftentimes they're painted to be friends, but how much are they really friends? Especially when they put on camera into an awkward situation where your ex, who you may still have feelings for in some way, is asking you for dating advice. All of this is weird. And just to throw in one more, Chris's ex. We cannot talk enough about, you have to understand it's not just about who that man was at the time and what he might have been going through, but let's not count out what the woman was going through or willing to put up with or not. Her being Chris's ex, willing to be someone who's submissive and all the things that he may like, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing he likes or wants. He has shown interest in Jessica, who is purely type A. And yes, he has noted that he needs her to be softer, but that doesn't mean he still doesn't like the fact that she's a go-getter and has her own business and stuff like that. So in my mind, these exes can't offer much, if perhaps anything, besides means to expose things that they may have had a problem with, but might have been exclusively about their relationship because of who they are, especially the way that the men or else the women in other seasons reacted to them. But with that said, I believe in the next episode, the guys are meeting the ladies' friends, and that might be a better way to gauge whether or not these people might actually be matches overall. As we head into the final major and traditional situations of the series, it becomes harder and harder to say who's gonna make it to the end because they settled or truly met the one.